All right, good morning and welcome back to day 2 of the Cedar Fox workshop. Hope you all slept well after yesterday and not have nightmares or something. What we're doing. This is supposed to be helpful to all of you, rather than be threatening in any way. We'll actually run through a case example today and see that we decided to put it up. It was not a perfect evaluation, so we'll just jointly look through it and see where the shortcomings are and how you would have done better yourself. Okay, so the agenda for today, this morning, is just a couple of things on the user manual. We already did that yesterday. Just one slide I have on that, and I had one slide I missed showing, which was all the toolbar icons that we have. And I have a few slides on upgrades to Cedar Fox that we have planned for the next few weeks, next 6 to 8 weeks, next few months, that kind of thing. So what are the kinds of things we work on? I really can't indicate. I don't know what's going to come up, say, a year from now or 2 years from now, because general directions are set in terms of what we're going to be looking at. So I'll indicate that, and then we'll go back to actual Cedar Fox again, other than my talking, where we will take up a case example that Pam Zilli kindly sent to us just before the workshop. Said, here is an actual case I worked on. See what you can do with this. So we will actually, Chen and Harish have been working on it, and so they'll show what they were able to do with it. And the final discussion is really broad discussions where you all are more knowledgeable than I know. I've actually been in a couple of federal cases in a Daubert hearing, but I just testified on individuality of handwriting. You have a broader knowledge of these things. You have testified in front of jury and so on, so you know more of these issues. So maybe that'll become a free discussion there. Issues of competency training and so on, we can talk about it a little bit. Acceptance of this by the QD community is another issue. So that's the plan for this morning. So I'll be just doing the first part, which should take about 15 minutes or so, and then we'll go to the casework. Okay, once again, the user manual, because of so many options in this, this is almost like a Windows system, so many things you can do, menus and so on. It becomes necessary to gain familiarity with it and have a user manual and so on. We went through that. There's some videos there inside the user manual if you use that option while you're installing it. It's just a lot of additional overhead to have videos in there, which is why the default option will not install the videos. So if you really want it, you can have it there. So that's the user manual, and they're all available in the help menu. When you go over to the help menu and pull up the user manual, you'll get this screen, and then you can search through that to see how this is done. We've already used the toolbar. I just thought I'd just mention it one more time. This is the toolbar icons that are present. When you open the Cedar Fox screen, open question document, open known document, saving, document properties, show combined document features when you have matched two documents, auto-identify characters in terms of when you click that, what are the characters it recognized on its own without your helping it, telling it what the characters are. So that's one of those. Show words. This is getting all the words that it has recognized, that it has segmented out. Show lines. What are all the lines in the text that there are? This is a define rectangular region of interest, and this is define a polygonal region of interest. So you're clicking around and selecting some region out of a larger document. Word spotting. We saw this already in the search thing. There is a separate icon for it. If you click on that, it will enable that whole thing to be able to say, I would like to spot this wherever it occurs in these documents. Then there is ID, this identification, that is 1 to n identification, that is who among these people or these samples wrote this, or which particular document matches this best in terms of the writer. This is CW correct word segmentation. When you have got a word segmentation and it's done it wrongly, and you would like to click on that to say, get it right in this manner. The automatically auto word true. That is word WR stands for word recognition. So that's a rarely used one. We thought it might be important. We put it in. It's in the search category to be able to say, recognize this word, and I'll give you a lexicon what it is. So that is that kind of function. This is an important one called process. That is, after you open a document here, if you click on that, I mean, you need to click on that to process it. Otherwise, it just opens it and you're just looking at the image. Processing means do a number of things like get the lines, get the words, recognize things, so on. All of that happens when you do process image. And there is the print function. In any given screen you are in, you can print that. So that's the print function. And this is a one about Cedar Fox that tells you the version number and things like that. So that is the set of icons which, as you use, you become familiar with it. It's useful to have it all together in one place. Okay, so this is, I'm already getting into the future. I may come back to the casework because it'll give us a sense for some things we cannot do. Maybe we can do very soon. Version 1.2, we hope to have it ready within 3 to 4 weeks because the kinds of things we want to put into it are already available. They're quite substantial actually. We haven't integrated it fully just to make sure that it wasn't running into problems, and we haven't tested it fully and so on. These are additional tools for image manipulation. We mentioned the eraser tool, which is to get rid of noise and interfering things. When you're matching shapes, there's some interference here that's causing the system to think that is the legitimate part. Like when you have a underline or a ruled line interfering with the signature, and it ends up thinking that's part of the signature, and so you want to kind of participate in it and say that is not part of the signature. There's a salt and pepper noise removal too, right?
That's an automatic mode, yeah.
That's an automatic.
Yeah. But still some noise that will remain after that.
Mm-hmm.
So some margin that remains that can be removed.
Yeah. So there are a couple of these things we have to we'll put that into that as options that you can just use that. Now, another improvement which we are already working on is as we discussed a little bit yesterday, software development is always a continuing process. So it is never finished. So I don't want people to get the impression this is just being worked upon and it's only going to be available way down. And there's something here. Hopefully you can use this. If you conclude you cannot use it until that is then, that's fine. But we are working on some of these things. And so version 1.3, 6 weeks or so, line segmentation improvements. I'll show you what I mean by line segmentation improvements. The other one is ability to handle special characters. Currently, the system is ignorant of things like commas. It doesn't know anything about commas. So a comma is a big issue. As you'll see in this case where the Pam sent us, comma is an issue. We kind of said a comma is just a little stroke here. Maybe it's not so important for analysis. It could be important. So our system is ignorant of commas. It also is ignorant of special symbols. We realized in the fluffy example you all wrote, $sign was quite prominent there, and in ransom notes, $signs are going to be there, I suppose. So we really should put in $sign into it, so the system should know how people write $signs. Well, how will the system learn about $signs? We created this Cedar letter originally. We never put a $sign in that Cedar letter. Nobody had to make up a $sign. So we really don't know how people write $signs at all. The way the system works is by learning how people actually write these things. So we need multiple samples of $signs written by the same person. What is your internal variation of writing a $sign? And how do other people write? So we need that data. So in order to implement this, I need samples of commas, I need samples of $signs, and statistically significant number. I need, it's nice to have several hundred samples of dollars and commas written by the same person. Of course, if you organize it, written by A, written by B, written by C, written by D, now we can calculate how different it is between two people and how similar it is within that person. One way we could possibly do is I would go around all my graduate students who are all from China and India, how $signs are written by Chinese and Indians. That's what it will become, basically, the data set. Last time around, we didn't do that. We sent it around all over the country to get a more representative way of writing. If you just have one particular group with a certain training, system will get biased. So it would be nice to get that kind of thing. And what are the other things you see in handwriting? I don't think we see all the special symbols that we have on a keyboard, right? When you're handwriting, you will not be using those large number of symbols that are available on a keyboard. There's only a few things, I suppose. from our experience now, dollar sign, comma, maybe question marks, of course, might come, and exclamation marks. We had in our own example quote marks. We never did anything with the quote marks, So these common things we need samples of, so we can learn on it and put that in. The current system, as you saw, doesn't really learn from what the document examiner is teaching it. We teach it actually ahead of time, and we pre-program it, and then we put it in the system, and so that's it. Okay, so that is something would be nice to have in another future version. One slide on the line segmentation. We have one graduate student who's working with Harish on this just one issue. Is the system when it encounters a document here where things are running into each other, it really can't do much about it. It just cuts it through here. So what happens is that word is basically information there is lost, in the sense that becomes that particular shape, and of course you can choose not to use that at all. But this is the kind of segmentation it ends up in. So how do we do that? Possibly by following these strokes here and connecting. It's kind of a challenging problem to write a computer program that's going to follow these things. Here is again an example of a cognitive issue human beings can do so well. It's very hard to write a computer program that's actually going to do it that way to get these things. So it's not an easy task, and I hope to have something in it. It might be a lifetime type of work to do that, but we'll just do what we can in a short period of time. Other future things as we get into December, I agree with Jerry that we need to do something about the graphics interface. Perhaps constantly displaying the working image on the side and having everything else appear on another panel. Things like that. That will have to redesign the graphics interface significantly, which means we are messing around with all the basic stuff which might break things by doing all of that. So that's something we have to be aware of. So perhaps we'll aim for something like December to do that. And there's also an issue of an improved statistical model. We aren't really using all the statistics as well as we could, because we opted in favor of statistical independence, which allowed for things to be very simple, features to be added and removed, things like that. And possibly here's something strange happened. When we wrote our original paper in the Journal of Forensic Sciences 2002, it was titled Individuality of Handwriting. We used a much more powerful statistical model at that time. We used what's called as an artificial neural network to do all the analysis. And then when we started putting it into a usable software, that was just our laboratory type of work. We just looked at all these handwriting samples, can the computer tell this is written by the same person or different person, and we reported pretty high scores, 97% for full page of handwriting. Computer is right 97% of the time. Is it the same writer or different writer on 1,500 samples? So that's what we reported in the paper. But there we were using an artificial neural network to actually perform all these statistical calculations, like log likelihood ratio computation and so on. And then, but when we went to the design on the or the software that we made generally available, we opted to change the artificial neural network to a simpler statistical model, which is statistical independence and so on, which is just multiplying probabilities and so on. Simplicity made the whole system easier to kind of modify, because an artificial neural network has to be retrained when you add a new feature. As we are designing things, when we add a few more features into the system, the whole thing has to be retrained again, because it depends on all the correlations and so on. This system doesn't have to do any of those problems. You just build on top of what exists. Simply add on and add on. If you have a few more features, add more on, it'll add something to the likelihood ratio. So we opted for that simplicity, but made the overall performance lower. So then what we found, this system was not getting 97% like the original design said on those things. It went down to 93% or something like that. Then of course we started improving things here and there. So we managed to creep back up with this system by adding more features to almost what we were at earlier on. With fewer features, we were getting higher performance. So all of these things, these are all design decisions that have to be made. So maybe we'll put some of this back in. But disadvantage again of doing that is another design we have in mind is some of you brought this issue up is how can we participate more in what the system is doing? We could definitely do that. We could say, well, I could define some features on the fly and add that and help the system along. maybe a little bit more like fish, where you actually, say the U has this distance and so on. Those are all user defined or the document examiner defined features. And if we want to add that in, something like fish, then we should keep with the current simpler model, because the retraining becomes a horrendous issue. We'll have to have lots of training samples of all of this and all the others. Our training data is not part of the system. It was all outside, where we calculated all these probabilities and statistics. We just brought in the mean and the variance into the system. We didn't actually have the data from which the mean and the variance was computed. So we just have simple things like when we talk about an E, right, we're computing the distance between the two, and then we have two probability distributions, same writer, different writer, and both distributions have a mean and a standard deviation. Those are two numbers we save. It's a very simple thing. Just store the mean and the standard deviation, mean and the standard deviation. When you give me a particular set pair of E's, calculate the distance and say, what is the probability? Same writer, different writer. Calculate the likelihood ratio. So that's all we are storing, two numbers, as opposed to storing all the data. So improved statistical models will have that disadvantage. So something we need to do. Further down the line, we hope to attack this problem of disguised handwriting. I don't know how much we can do on this topic. That's one of the things we're targeted to do, and we hope to have some funding to do this kind of work, in which case data becomes important. We have some data that Lisa has given us on disguised handwriting, and so this is going to be down the line. We don't want to have too long a timeline. In about 9 months or so from now, maybe we'll do that. And then training on data sets prepared by QD examiners. So although this is an issue where how can we get the system to now to personalize your system to yourself? Currently, it's all trained by us and given to you, and you don't have any control of how it does these things. Why not have interfaces where you say that I have all this collection of data, I would like my system to personalize to myself, and I would like you to learn from my data, so that in the future you perform like me. So I guess PDAs are like that to some extent, right? They come in with built-in handwriting recognition capability, but you can also adapt it to your own handwriting. You can teach it. I don't know how many of us teach these things, how many of us use those PDAs, but so that function was made available by whoever, Palm and so on. So that is that personalization. So that could be a nice thing to have down the line, where we put in training capability. So these could be some future releases. A statistical model, I think I already covered this, which was current statistical models in system uses independence assumption. Performance is not as high with better theoretical models such as neural networks. And then plan to incorporate a compromise model, example, pairwise independence. So this is some of the things that instead of fully independent features, which leads to lower performance, why not something in between, saying allow for two features correlations, things like that. So these could be built in. Okay, so why don't we first do the casework, and then we'll come back to the comments.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Could you do like a mailing list or something so that we can find out when the new versions are out?
I was going to ask Carl to give me the latest mailing list of this group, because the way this worked was Larry Olson gave me a list of email addresses, and I passed it on to Carl, and some of them were bad. Larry had an old email address, and so Carl actually did more work, and he was talking to people,
I'll make photocopies for you to take home and throw away, but if you want them electronically sent to you, I can have Rose just send you each to this email address, the list of the others on the email address.
That would be great.
Is that preferable?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Are we having a break, or are we just going till closure?
Yeah, let's just see how we go. Maybe we should just go till closure.
Okay, I
if
may
people
run
are
out
leaving
through this. Then I may run out while you're speaking.
Yeah.
In a bit.
Yeah.
Harry, another suggestion too is as far as changes you're making and improvements you're making on here too. I hate to say it, but there's a great gap between users on the bench like ourselves and academics such as you folks that try to come up with a item to help us, but really have never done it yourselves, and vice versa. We have no idea what you are doing. As you make some of these major changes, what you might want to do is just take that one small part and either consult directly with maybe 2 or 3 examiners, sit them down and say, okay, just try this one section. No, don't do the whole thing, but just go through this one section and see how you like it. Does it work the way you think it should work? Now, in your minds, I'm sure it works perfectly, but when we look at it from a totally different perspective.
Yeah.
And for as you go along, it might save a lot of time in the long run and give you a better concept of how we work in little bites instead of just as a version comes out, you kind of throw it, and we got to stand back there and look at it and say, well, okay, what changes have been made now, and go through it. It might be something, you may have a panel, form a little panel of maybe 3, 4, or 5 people that when you do a little section, you finish it, you kind of ship them out to it and says, hey, I need some feedback on how this little module works.
So can we teleconference, I mean, rather than travel, you could also teleconference
Absolutely.
after you work with it.
You'd want to do it either over the internet or by telephone or what have you. Do it very inexpensively, per se, but the idea is, I think that communication would make your process go a heck of a lot easier. And when we look at it, we'll be able to look at it from a totally different perspective than the people who are creating.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I was recently visiting Boulder, Colorado, at there's a company called Pearson. They are big in producing software for scoring essays. It's like a different domain, but mostly language processing. So they have this fabulous software that's used by the statewide school system and so on. ETS also has this kind of software. And when kids take SAT and things like that, the essays and so on, they're automatically scored. And it was independently, I was hearing this, that the best way to do these things is not get all these programmer types to come up with all these things you put in there, because we all think of, okay, let's do this, let's do that. We know how to add these icons and write the code for it and it'll do something. Eventually it becomes a very complicated gizmo that a user will say, this is too complicated, and throw it away. The best way to do it is actually put the real user and watch behind their backs what they do. They might be using just very few simple functions, and you learn from that, saying this is actually what they need. And not all the things we can think of. Some of it may not be very important at all. So that's the same advice.
Just like I was saying yesterday to you guys, enlarging and reducing the image isn't a big deal, because you do it as you have to do it through there. To us, it's a big deal. It's a real big deal, and have to go through 5 or 6 keystrokes to enlarge it by 50%, and then 2 minutes later do the same thing is a big deal for us. Whereas you're programming it, it isn't a big deal for you. So that's why I say that might save a lot of time and a lot of energy in the long run.
Yeah. Well, I would really look forward to that. We'll try and do that. Once our NIG funding gets started again, to work with you on that.
That's something to consider.
And meanwhile, if you would like to, send us any specific suggestions, such as this, that's a very specific suggestion. On the enlargement of the images or magnification or whatever you call it. Instead of having a few discrete choices, maybe a continuous type of scroll bar and things like that. So that's something, that's a very specific suggestion. We could just do it, saying here is one concrete small thing you could do. We could do that. But other bigger things will actually need some give and take and discussion.
Oh, absolutely. Right? And like I said, if you took a survey here in this room on many of these items, some of us would be in just total disagreement on how it should be done.
Right.
But at least, I think you'd bring you down a road more towards a product that the user could more readily, adopt to.
Yeah, that's a good point you made. As I said, some of you may be in disagreement. Okay, this is going to happen in any area. Somebody says that's important, another one says, no, that's not important. I mean, this can be in small things and it can be in bigger things too. I mean, we were trying to get from document examiners, what are some certain methods that are useful to you? One person says, well, matching to Palmer is important to me, but somebody else says, no, that's not important at all. And then some users say, signature matching, that's not important at all to us. Right? At Secret Service, you don't do much signature matching, right?
You do.
You do?
Yeah.
Not much.
Not in
Huh?
the computer program, but in
Yeah,
writing cases.
yeah.
Yeah.
So some of you are specialized in only in signature matching, the others are only in the writer verification, identification type of thing. So there again, it's a broad issue of which that's a very broad application. Other than specific techniques too, in terms of which particular method is useful to you, and so we have to kind of sift through. And senior people like Jerry are valuable because he's seen it all and maybe give us sift it for us and says this is what it should be. Maybe I should just wait some of your opinions we may be forced to do that. Okay, so all right, we'll have a little bit more time to have some more free-form discussion. So let's go to this casework. Although we're not going to shine in it, but hopefully it isn't too bad. Pam, can you tell us a little bit while he's setting up what this case is all about?
It was just typical threat letter sent to an individual. The writing that I sent here was just the question letter and the exemplar from the person that was identified, and he pled guilty, so I never had a trial on this. But I didn't have the best known writing because they didn't have any dictated text. The investigators did what many do, the little amount that they could to get by. So I had 3 exemplar forms, but not any samples of the dictated text of the letter. But I identified it. I did have one non-requested sample that I didn't send because it just was his signature, and it wasn't relevant to my identification, and I couldn't block out that, so I didn't send that form.
Okay. First of all, I will show there are totally 4 images, 1 question and 3 known. I just show those original images. This is known form A. This is known form B.
While you have that up, these are all things that the suspect is asked to write these things. Is that right? Yeah. And so is that a form that many of you have seen before? Yeah? Similar to that. Okay.
Some of the same names.
See, if there is a standard form like this, we could do a form subtraction.
There is no standard form.
No. Okay.
Everybody uses their own.
Has their own form, but they're all various variations of the same type of information.
See, a nice interface it would be to feed us the blank form, and then here's the filled out form, so it kind of removes the form completely. So that's one design we could have.
Yeah, this is a form C. And, yeah, this is the question document. Okay. In order to process it, first we need to remove these lines and also those forms and the printed text. So we already pre-processed everything, and here is the. Without this, we didn't do anything. We just used the system to do binarization and the underline remove. So this is the, and there's still maybe some errors here. For example, the stroke here for F. Some of those small errors we didn't fix. So you can see the scoreboard here. Probably I will do this.
What are we matching here?
question is known form C, of region of interest of C.
Okay.
So the original C is like this. We only take the upper part
Yeah.
and do the underline remove and get the text here. But unfortunately, we got most of features give the negative.
Maybe you can show the review details and show us why that happened.
Yeah. It's macro features. Primarily, there's average height. I think in forms, it's different when you write freestyle. So forms give you the country what the height of it, and also the
There's
rule
an
line.
issue. Forms you write small and this one is big, so it is comparing the average height. So there is an
Yeah,
option
so
you can
this
turn that
give,
off, right?
Yeah, this feature itself gives -4. It's
Can you turn that off?
sure. It's like 40% of this total number.
What about the extra lines on there that are still in the document? Is that affecting it?
Yeah, it will affect.
Extra.
Affect
Those lines next to the
Yeah.
NDA, I can't read what the words
You're
are.
right. The dotted, the noisy points there,
Noise.
which
Which
could be cleaned up before we process it.
Yeah, those are the leftovers of the line removal.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But that's affecting,
But it looks like it's black, so that means it's not being considered, right?
partially bright, partly
Is it?
it's color.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't tell what color.
Does the word truthing make a difference? Because
Because
like
A-tour
a
is
tour, that's two separate words. Next, a jump to, there we, AM September. Does that make a difference?
It
Those
was,
words are broken up.
Yeah, the words, some of the words have not been segmented, but they have been truths together.
Oh, okay.
But what comes out of that is that the characters are still chopped out correctly. So ultimately, the characters are what that are used.
Okay.
But
So
there obviously there are them. It's like a Marlene on the right side. It's got a vertical piece going with that Marlene. You know?
yes,
Yeah.
Frisco on the left there,
Uh,
the F is, the top of the F is a different color entirely.
yeah. One ideal way to remove this is to have a nice eraser which you can erase those things. Again, those small dashes
Yeah,
that come out.
this from this which go on here. That's simply by half-line removal. It detects this vertical line also, but not remove completely. I think it's because related to some of the
So we did a line removal that removed most of the margin.
Yeah, we used the system to do the line removal.
Yeah,
we
and
didn't
it
use
didn't do a
any
perfect job there.
Photoshop.
Yeah.
But for those 3 known, we did some erase using Photoshop or the Paint. But for this question, we just use the system to do this, so it's not very.
You said you have used Photoshop for this? To
Uh,
clean up the image first?
for those forms, we remove those. Probably I can open. Yeah, it's like this. To erase those print text and some of those vertical lines here. Then this is the result. And use the system itself to remove the underline.
But now this comparison was only based on comparing the note to Form C, right?
Yes,
Okay.
question to know C. And if here, we tried all 3 of them, they all get similar result. And
See, an important part of this comparison is in order to find everything you need to make any conclusion, you have to pick from all 3 of those known forms because nothing exists in just one of those forms that's sufficient to identify the writer. You have to use the information from all 3. So that would make a big difference in your scores. Plus, of course, the comma and the and symbol were pretty significant in this.
When we compare the knowns against the knowns, the system does give a positive answer.
Why
all
don't you
because-
show that?
Yeah. Again, that might be because they were written at the same time. They were asked to write the nodes. So yeah, we can compare two nodes. In fact, all the comparisons A, B, A, C, and B versus C, they all give a positive score. And says the same writer yes, and include yeah.
But my point is, can't you compare the question to A, B, and C as a group?
Yeah, that's something we have not yet incorporated.
But what about adding all the scores from all the three together?
They're all negative.
That's
still.
But individually they're negative. When you add them or average them, they're still negative.
Yeah.
Can you set this up like you do with the signatures, where it's a batch exam against the question?
Yes. So this writer verification currently is when you do a 1 versus 3 verification, it actually internally does 1:1 verification and then adds it up. So it doesn't currently put the whole 3 as one document and compares it. So that's something we need to
Yeah, that's important.
It's huge.
Yeah. Because in this case, there are a lot of things, the way the pen drags from, the bottom of the character up to the top to dot the I, and those sort of characteristics that may occur on one page, but not the other. And you may find some of them occurring in one page, so you have a fair comparison to this page, and a fair to that one, and a fair to that one, but you need all three as one set to reach your conclusion.
Yeah, that's a straightforward change for us to merge the two. It's just we'll be dealing with information on all these three images at the same time. We are just handling it separately and adding them up. Okay, this might be something worthwhile to look at. Even if you don't agree with the final conclusion of what the system is saying, it allows you to examine pairwise what things look like for visual examination.
Yeah, this is one of our strong features. The word. This also does not do well too good in this particular. All the comparable words between the question and the third document are taken, and again the overall score is negative, and every single of them is negative. Not sure because visually, again, I guess the eyes. I'm not sure. What would you think? By just would you be able to say something by just looking at the words? Visually, they look a little different, but
Look good to me.
the slant of the eye, for example, the fourth one.
And they're showing very broken. Why is it so?
Yeah, that's another issue I think is performed not so well. We have to do binarization first for all the grayscale image. And this one particular one is, you can see it says those difficulty here. It's not a clean so the binarization caused those stroke broken.
Did you try the various binarizations we have?
Yeah, this is the best one we got current of those three.
Those three.
Yeah. Okay. So those broken might affect the GSC features. That's one possibility.
Right. Well, of course, one way is you could use some other thresholding algorithm and come in here, right?
Yeah.
Other than what we have provided. So we broke it up too much. That might be one reason.
Right.
Okay. One of the things when you were talking earlier about the punctuation that I think is evident in Pam's case is that it's not only the letter shape, how it relates to the line, but some of the connecting strokes, how the T cross moves into the O and things like that a document examiner looks at, that is very, very telling and very, very, perhaps very, very important in the examination. Because one-on-one comparison you just showed, if you look at some of those characteristics, you see the connecting strokes and how that person habitually connects one letter to the other. That is not class characteristic, but is more individual. And that can be very important in the examination.
Well, and placement too. I mean, not only spacing between letters, spacing between words, but placement above, on, below the baseline, how they compare to letters next to each other. If the E is slightly higher than the D, things like that. Those are very significant.
Harry, have you ever done any comparisons about using 4 8-bit grayscale as opposed to just binary to see if it varied considerably? Because you lose a lot of information when you bring it down to just black and white. I mean, there's a lot of the gray in there that just disappears, and you see it in the letter breakups and what have you, which would change the results, I imagine, considerably.
Yeah.
On that, the thing is, for example, this particular document here, if we were to use the grayscale, all this information also is going to be used.
Yes.
So
You have to clean it up.
So that part maybe first need to be cleaned up, and only the grayscale of the handwriting needs to be used. So that's something that's a pre-processing step that we would have to apply first.
Absolutely. I mean, I fully am aware of that. But my question goes back to, I was just wondering if you'd actually tried a clean piece. This is not a good example. This is a clean piece where you took the writing and perhaps used a 8-bit and as opposed to a 1-bit image, and seeing if it actually physically made a difference in your calculations when you were done and how significant it is, because again, you're losing a tremendous amount of detail. It's making it easier to process, but a lot of the words are actually changing shape to some degree as you do that. And I was just curious. It was more of a question.
On and off over the years, we have used both grayscale and just for character recognition, or getting features. We had found that grayscale does give you something more, but the amount of improvement was not significant for the recognition point of view. And then all the speed, of course, is lost tremendously. Absolutely. In the early days when we developed, this was done under our Postal Service project early on, when we had to do things very fast. For the volumes of mail.
Well, but
here in this domain, it might not be the case.
In the Postal Service, it's a much narrower view of what you're looking at, too. I mean, you pretty much know where it is, or what it should be. So you can do some interpretation. Here, you have no idea. I mean, you have no clue, really, what the material is you're looking at and the different formats you're going to find it in.
Purely. The mail sorting job is a much easier job than a document exam.
Absolutely.
Well, and I don't think you guys need to spend time coming up with tools to clean up images, because we can clean things up in Photoshop in just a matter of moments. So we can give you, or we ourselves can create nice, clean images, where you guys don't need to worry about incorporating tools to clean out, grayscale.
That's right. Some of those are pretty complicated. So if Photoshop has it and you can do it yourself, so you come in with those clean images.
Sure.
And then give that.
And I had actually, at one point, cleaned this up before I sent it to you. But then I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't do that because I have no idea what your system does, and maybe that's part of this process. So I didn't.
All right, we'll continue to work with the cleaner image and see what we get. Okay.
Yeah, and also this from JPEG, I can clearly see.
That was another issue, Pam. JPEG is some kind of a lossy compression.
And I brought it to you in PNG, but he'd already loaded it up here, and I couldn't send it email.
Yeah, we can try the original PNG.
Okay.
But on the cleanup issues, to bring another suggestion on the cleanup issues, rather than spend a tremendous amount of time on writing these in there, what you might do is just write literally a pre-process instruction for Photoshop. Almost everybody uses Photoshop. I mean, that's pretty, just like the eraser. Put in your exam, go through the steps on how to clean it up to prepare it for years ahead of time, which would save you a lot of effort initially.
Yes.
Just
and you're saying we should recommend that you do that.
recommend ahead, and also actually gives them instructions on how to do it, so that the person who's not really familiar or all that familiar with it can kind of step through it.
Yes.
That's just writing up a set of instructions, or maybe even a small little macro or action for Photoshop that would do it. You know, why go through all the problem when you can just make a little macro or an action that would just, you put in your letter and it'll do exactly what you're doing in Cedar Fox without writing all that code to have to go through the process.
Can I ask a question? I mean, what's really the goal here? What's the end product you guys are trying to achieve? I mean, is it something to perform casework in the same realm that FISH does? Or is it just as a database to collect data on handwriting formations? Or, you know, I mean, really, what's the end goal?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question, which is what we're talking about next. So, goes to the use of Cedar Fox in casework. I think of Cedar Fox as a tool. It's not, you know, to replace the document examiner in terms of your function. It's something, it's a tool where it tries to take you along the way, and it's doing a number of things. For example, it did all the comparisons of the characters and words. You know, we saw how it displays all you're able to display all the E's in one document, E's in the other document. So this is the kind of analysis it does, trying to go through the whole process. And you can get into it and see, you know, what is it seeing, you know, so that might allow you to do whatever you do, perhaps better. So we're trying to do the, you know, whole process. Obviously, we want to show you a real example to say, hey, we don't do it as well as any of you would have done in this case, you know, by using the tools in this manner. So it is just to, you know, to walk you through the whole process and say, okay, this is what, you know, the system is doing, and perhaps with your interaction in it, maybe together between man and machine interaction, if we did all the cleanups and things like that, we together will have a better result at the end. Okay, so this is the kind of thing. So we hope it's of some value. All of these things it does as an additional input to you, saying, okay, what does the system think? You know, and you can say, well, you know, here is you know, where it is not done as well, and here is where I could do, and so on. So that's where it is right now. Maybe we can make it even more interactive in the future. So that, you know, we're trying to do the whole process, give you the strength of evidence at the very end. You know, so that's the overall, you know, plan here. But along the way, I think human interaction is necessary. Yeah.
Just like to add one thing. There are a number of cases in Cedar Fox that it will not say identified as same or identified as different. It could also be somewhere in between, no conclusions and things in between. So what I'm saying with Cedar Fox is that with what we have tested so far, when it is identified as same or identified as different, extreme large LLR values or extreme low LLR values, the system has so far been never wrong in those extreme cases. For example, in this particular case, if you note that the interpretation, I think, on this document is indications did not. It's just below no conclusion. So this is already, it's not so sure of what it's trying to conclude. If it was somewhere here and it's wrong, then that's something that's really something Cedar Fox is not doing anything right at all. But here, around this region, Cedar Fox itself is not sure. So this is already some kind of a reject. The system is saying, okay, this has to be gone further to an examiner kind of thing. But there are occasions where it gets it somewhere identified as same or different. In those cases, you can rely on the system a lot more. Saying, okay, that's something that's definitely giving you a valuable information there. Yeah.
I think it's, like I said, on the page before that, when you go back there and it says no on there. That's like I talked with Harry before. That's you really don't want an absolute yes and an absolute no. I mean, that line probably should be eliminated because that is very misleading. It's just misleading to even what you're doing here. This is much more accurate to what's happening. It's a little confused, as a document examiner would be. But to make a black and white yes and no, they wrote it, they didn't write it, we just don't do it that way.
Since
Or
we
nor
already
does
have
can
this,
you.
we should remove that.
What is that?
Since we already have this, we should remove that.
Yeah, we actually added this very recently. So Chen is just saying, he's the one who manages the code. He's just saying, since we have this, we should remove that.
Yeah, I mean, it does. It makes it a little more confusing and a little more misleading.
Yeah. Okay, so version 1.2 will do that. Okay. All right. Okay, let's see. Let me go back to my slides. I think I have a couple more thoughts on what Karen just asked about.
Well, Harry, can I say one more thing about that? I mean, I've yet to see a computer program that really evaluates the features that most of us think are important. And that's because it is those, what Lloyd Cunningham calls subtle and fine features, those drag strokes, that type of thing.
Right.
I asked somebody yesterday or this morning at breakfast, you know, where do you see this going? And if we were to have a repository, a database of handwriting for the field, where should that database be? And in unison, everybody in this conversation said Cedar Fox. So I see this as, it seems like it would be just an incredible tool as a database for research purposes for the foundation of proving what it is that all of us do. Because it's not going to pick up those subtle and fine features, but it does give this great data about how many people are making this form of an E, or this form of an L, or this TH combination. And that way, I think it's incredible. But I just, you know, maybe I just don't get it, but I just don't see how it adds to casework. And then there's just so many things I would find problematic.
If I can add to that, yesterday we spoke about the weighting for differences and similarities. Yeah. So I think first of all we need to have that database. I know how many types of H's and E's and R's and so on are there. And then when we get that, then we have this database, and you have maybe a panel of examiners, maybe 50, 100 examiners, look at features and say, okay, looking at these two documents, I give this feature, you know, X amount of weighting, Y amount. Then we write the software to go into that, and then take those weightings into consideration when you go to the final window there to get a conclusion. How we get there, I have no idea. I think that's the only way we're going to go from the database to having something that's going to give a conclusion. And that's what we get paid to do. What's the variation or what's the difference? That's a huge amount of what we do there.
And you just can't average those. I mean, that's where I...
Well, when I'm saying averages, okay, let's say 10 examiners give a connecting stroke between importance of 6 and 8, then the average will be 7. So that goes in as an average weighting, I should say.
But I mean the way that their program was averaging, you know, there's this many characteristics, so these many match, these don't, because all of those...
But if you do the weighting, then you can do the total average.
Yeah.
See, some of these subtle features that Karen, you spoke about, indeed, they're going to be very hard to get computer programs to do those.
Right. Exactly.
Not that it cannot be done, but it requires, as I mentioned, even separating the strokes from one and the other. It's cognitively we see it.
Right.
To write a program, it is not so easy. Right. So of course we work largely in this field of artificial intelligence, trying to get computers to get smarter.
Right.
So we're trying to push it along those. It's going to take us 50 years of work to get to those points, if at all.
Right.
So, but that's the direction we are pushing in. So what we're trying to do is, while we're trying to push our computer programs in that direction, can you use any of it, what it's doing, you know, in your work? So that's what, you know, that's my ultimate goal is to make smart machines.
Sure.
You know, and this is the domain I chose to build smart machines. And So that, overall they're going in that direction. But along the way, a number of things you pointed out. You think it's going to be valuable for creating a database. I hadn't thought of that.
Oh, yeah,
So it might be
Definitely.
a particular path we can take. Right. Saying what it's doing can be a value just to you.
Yeah.
Saying, okay, it's discovering all these different types of letters and so on, and that itself is a value to you. Some byproducts sometimes become valuable than the real product.
I think that'll be a huge step forward.
Right.
I totally agree with your initial concept that this is an aid to the examiner. This is not going to. That's why I have this problem with this yes/no thing. This is not the way it should work. I really like the new system on there, but it's an aid. When I look at it, I would use it in the form that this is not going to tell me the answer. What this is going to do, again, this process is much different than what the actual document examiner does, and you're never going to reach that point, at least in the foreseeable future. You're using the gross characteristics of the form itself to do a calculation to come up with a thing. We look at much of the fine detail in those gross forms. But what I would use it for, and have tried using it for, is to say, okay, this is my take on what this handwriting is. I've identified this. If this says, no, it's totally different, or at least it's below that level, I'm going to want to go back and see why it says that. Because have I made a mistake? And not that I certainly can't make a mistake. And if I have, I want to look at that from a different perspective. And this gives a different perspective. I don't think we, as document examiners, look at the gross characteristics as a whole, because we can't do that mentally.
Actually, we have a few features in the system. We forgot to show the TH.
Yes.
Can you just do that, Chen? We are building a. So some of the features that we saw, I mean, you cannot relate to it because it's computing in a totally different manner. Some of these cognitive features we are actually trying to build in also. There are a few in the system. We may have to do more. There's subtle features you talk about, or the strokes, how they go, and things like that. The way you learn. So we have a couple of those things.
You're right on the TH. The TH is probably one of the most common groups. It is the most common group, and it's the one that we look at most. Many times I look at THs.
Yeah, and you have certain measurements for TH and so on.
And you have
so we are actually doing it in the same way.
What's important on that line? I mean, the reason that's important is it's a combination.
Right.
And so the fact that somebody makes an A, like when the computer yesterday, if I understood this, it said that the word have and those two terrible people abusing Fluffy up there, the word have, it gave it a positive as matching. Did I understand that yesterday?
Match.
It didn't match it, but it was a higher number.
It was
a
high correlation.
Okay, a high correlation. But I mean, half those letters were such class characteristics. I think a lot of examiners might have just thrown them out and said these aren't important. And you get down to that approach stroke or the things that are alike or different about them. And it's that combination of all those features that make it important. So I think the more combinations you guys look at, that could fill in for not picking up the fine and subtle details.
Yeah, I would like to comment on that. So when there are these not so powerful characters, such as E and zeros and ones, the system actually already knows they're not powerful. Because when you look at the learned PDFs, there is so much overlap between when the two samples come from the same writer, when the two samples from a different writer, there is no difference. The system that's what the system learns in the learning phase. So if you look at the distribution that comes when it's same, and then there's so much overlap that whatever you get from the documents, it's not going to add up the score so much, because the difference, the likelihood ratios are different between the two PDFs is almost going to be 1 always. It's never going to increase or decrease the score. So any not so powerful character, from the system's point of view, it will not drastically change the final score. What will change is if there is a very powerful discriminable character which has very separated distributions, then the likelihood LLR value is going to be really high or low. So that part of discriminability power is kind of built in the system there.
One of the One of the things I think, when you were talking about the value of the database, one of the things personally I think that could also be important to our field is the fact in not just talking about the things that we look at that the computer can't look at, but with forensics under attack, identifying the things that we can look at that the computer can look at, and we reach the same conclusion to help validate in a more objective form that, okay, the computer is looking at this, we look at this, we reach the same conclusion. So that, you know, in published articles and things to refute Denbo, Sachs, Riesinger, you know, whatever, that, you know, a computer, you know, that these programs looked at the things that we looked at, we are able to look at, and we're on the same track. And I see that in, you know, in adding to the arsenal of things that is not just we examiners see the same things. And that kind of goes along with what Karen was talking about the database type of approach.
So if we may quickly show one thing that the computer is actually doing, it does hopefully a little bit closer to some of the analysis that you all do. This set of features for TH, we got out of some description of QD examiner's approach to this. This is a set of features. Harish, are you familiar with these features?
Sure.
We'll go over that.
Yeah, these features are not the gradient, structure, and concavity features we talked before. These features are specific to the bigram TH.
Only when you're CTHs you compute these things,
yeah.
And you know that is the case. So angle formed between top of T, top of H, distance between top of T, top of H, T and H disconnected or disconnected, slant of T, slant of H, things like this. So we can program the computer to do this kind of thing too, where we specifically learn about how do you measure THs. And so you get these numbers here, F1, F2, F3, etc., F13. There are like, how many features? Something like 13 features.
13
right?
features.
There are 13 features for TH alone, very specific to TH. And so what do we do with that feature?
And all these 13 features are calculated for every pair of TH found in the two documents. So, for example, in this particular document, after word truthing, we found a lot of THs, and these 13 features are computed for every one of these. And if you look at the details, for example, this TH with this TH, so these is the details. So feature 1 was this value, feature 2 was this value, and what is the feature is the height of the bigram. And so it measures all these features and gives you the numbers. And then of course it goes ahead one further where it takes the difference and sees when it came from according to this difference, what does it conclude in terms of LLR value? Is it yeah?
Would you weight your LLR value depending on the quantity in either one? Let's say you had just one TH in the question and you had 10 in the known.
Yes.
Or vice versa. You had 10 in the question, only one in the known. Mm-hmm. Is it weighted for the quantity of samples you have to deal with?
Yes, it will be added 10 times. So if you had just 1 and 1 and 1 versus 10, the 1 versus 10 will have definitely a stronger say, because there are 10 LLRs getting added up, or so if they're all positive, they're going to be a much higher positive number or much lower negative number.
There is a little.
Well, I mean, if you had, let's say, 10 question in there, so you got variety in the 10, and you only have one K, one known, to compare it with, and it will vary between those 10. You should have a very weak conclusion based on that, because you just don't have enough samples to really even compare with those 10. You've only got a 1-to-1. No matter how you look at it. You may have 10 in the question, but you still only got one known to compare it with. So based on just the TH, it should be a very weak conclusion, if any at all. There should be no conclusion for the most part.
We have a way of using only some of these measures.
Yeah.
When you have 10 and 10 or 10 and 1, right?
Yes.
That should vary the end product considerably.
If you have 10 and 10, then it would constitute a little more. 10 and 1 is still going to give you 10 different LR values.
So something about we take the lower number.
Yeah, 1 is the lower, so we compare against the 10, we have 10 values.
What I'm saying is you just have, if you're only comparing one, I don't care how many questions you got, if you only got one known, you've got one known. And to make any type of definitive statement, you got a very poor sampling to make the comparison with. And I just wonder if it was weighted as to the quantity of samples you're dealing with.
In the known, okay, that we haven't specifically, program does not specifically how many samples are there in the known. So it currently it takes in, if there are 10 in the question, 1 in the known, it's the same as 1 in the question and 10 in the known.
Which is a different case
Okay.
altogether.
Okay.
Yeah, you've got a much different case. If you got one question and you got 10 samples here, you got a lot to compare it with. But if you got 10 questions and only one sample, you got very little of comparison purposes.
So yeah, we've discussed this, to some extent. So how do we handle variable number?
Yes.
Should we take the average of the whole score, or should we add them all up and this kind of thing?
Just straight adding, I don't think it worked very well there.
So the point here was that the subtle features, the kind of thing Karen talked about, hopefully, this is kind of the direction. We're not doing it for everything here. And we add this on. This is actually part of the system right now. THS, it knows how to analyze in this manner. Can you show the scoreboard now? Yeah. So whenever you have THS over here, THS over here, it goes through this kind of analysis automatically. And it computes all of them and say, look at this here. It says the THS contribute that much. 18 points to the, everything adds, so that's where the contribution is. And we are planning to add more of these things. I forget the next one we were looking at was what?
Was ER?
ER. ER was the next one.
NG, IOM.
Yeah. So these are the things. So there is only one of these sitting over here. The rest is all the kind of analysis we did using the other types of features. But this is a little bit more a cognitive feature that you can actually look at every one of the THS and this is where perhaps this kind of comparison between the document examiner and the computer analysis might be getting a little close. Yeah. So that's one direction we're planning to push. Yeah. Okay, so let's see what else. I guess we'll go back to the slides.
Since a few folks will be leaving relatively soon, with your permission, before you go on to the slides.
Okay.
Wanted to say my formal goodbye while you're still here, if you don't mind. And also, while I was out getting photocopies made for the attendee lists that you asked for, it's nice and pretty and yellow, I'll hand these out. I also saw on my desk was something that we had failed to put into the folders we had on your desk that I meant to. It's the permission to basically have you on with your backs to the heads to the cameras and your speech and so forth in here. So if you don't mind, before you leave the room, I'll need your name and signature and date on those. It's for NFSTC. Make sure they meet the law, whatever that is.
The recordings are going to be made publicly available, is that right?
Yes, but I don't know how. I don't know if they're going to be connected to a website for NFSTC or IJ or whatever, or eBay.
Me too. I think we're one short here.
And here are some, you should have one of these for yourself as well.
Yeah.
That's a list of, this is up-to-date emails and where people are from in the cities and states. Thank you for asking for it. I wish I had thought of doing it first. And if you're missing one, I have 10, so there's 10 copies around.
Signing on Friday the 13th makes it not. Right?
Sure. You'll have to use here. Where did you say? And in a formal sense, since you're all signing those things,
everybody did.
The workshop, I think, has fulfilled the purposes that NIJ set forth when they asked us to try to help them do this. And that, from that point of view, definitely you've been able to form the kind of technology transfer between those who have been developing and helping to make tools that you can apply to casework in a very substantive way to hopefully help you use such tools, whether it's this tool or others like it in the future. I really appreciate the role that you've played in putting this together and presenting it. And I really appreciate the role you played in accepting what was presented and feeding back information on how to move the technology forward, how to move the field forward using technologies such as these in a very different way than was available to you in the past. One thing I don't think NIJ thought would happen that we're clearly seeing, and you're the guinea pig that I warned you in the first day, it leads to excellent connections between examiners, and you're from all over the country, and this is a unique place to do it. Normally you'll be at a workshop in a conference that is with lots of other people that may have nothing to do with QD. This is a very different setting. Not only is that connection being developed for you, but because of the digitization and archiving and ultimately availability of this kind of technology transfer and the interface that went on between you and each other and you and the technology, this is going to apply not just to the 10 people we were lucky enough to have here doing this exercise, but actually it'll help the field in a very substantive way for as long as the digital archives exist and are available to other QD examiners in your generation of examiners and going forward. So you're leading the future in a very different way than you have. Most of you in the past have led the future that made up today, starting 10 years or more ago, and I won't say how many, so I don't get yelled at for how long you've been in the field, but you know this is going to help the next generation of examiners in a very different way than you got helped by others telling you they saw something at a meeting is not the same as seeing it and hearing the discussion, and their insights will be so much better because of what you did. I am so grateful that you chose to attend, that NIJ funded the attending is helpful, but that you chose to actually let us archive this for the record in a very different way. I hope that this will be how NIJ takes these kinds of exercises forward for the future, not just for QD, but for next week for LCM, SMS, and toxicology, and the polynomial texture analysis for guns and footprints. I mean, it's all going the same way, and it's wicked great to take advantage of this technology. Thank you so much, all of you, for being part of this. Thank you for presenting it. Now, when you wander out of the room at 10:15, we won't have missed telling you thank you to your, from my heart and from the heart of NIJ and NFSTC. I really appreciate your attendance and the participation and the gift you're giving back to the field. Thank you all.
Well, let me add my thank you to you all. I was very concerned that we wouldn't have anybody here, given the short amount of planning time that we had. So it's really wonderful that you all made the time. I'm sure this is summertime, and you could have been doing other fun things, back home. So delighted to have you all here, and I hope you will be partners. And I've been doing this for a number of years. Getting the interaction and so on is hard, but once we are all set to solve the same type of problems, maybe we'll put our energies together. And I hope it's been of some value to you. I know there are some issues about using casework and so on, but only by trying we can push it forward. Another point that Carl mentioned is it might not be just this technology, that you're going to be using or not using. It just perhaps opens up some possibilities in your mind, saying, hey, well, what could be happening 5 years down the road with somebody else who might be pushing this technology further. And so this is what is going to be happening in the field, that these things are going to be playing a role. And I feel this might revitalize not just our project, but things like this could revitalize this whole QD field. By bringing in younger people who are interested in technology, and they'll find that the field is keeping up with the times, and so it's an exciting area to get into because of all these other technological aspects that are going to be playing a role. So that might attract young people. We talked a little bit with Bishop the other day, saying sometimes you're not getting the brightest people to come in. Maybe this might attract some of them into the field. Particularly, there are all kinds of things like learning systems and so on that play a role. So hopefully it will contribute in that manner also to the field as a whole. Okay. All right. So we will continue. I just have a few more points to make. There is I think we went about this casework thing. So we talked about it already. Karen brought this issue up. let me restate it again. System does not replace human examiner. It's a tool that can assist the examiner by providing quantitative measures. Results can be cross-checked. Okay, to some extent you can do it. That's what we are driving towards. Intermediate results can be used to provide displays. Maybe you can just use it to say, here are some displays that I can get. Here are all the E's in this document. Here are all the E's in that document. I need to prepare some kind of a chart or something like that. Maybe it can be used for that. Letters, bigrams, words, and things like that. It can pull these up quickly for you. Okay, now the broader issues. What is the relationship, all of this, to the broad issue of Fry, Daubert, Kumho, etc.? All right. So this kind of work, we really started doing it for the individuality studies of handwriting, to analyze large quantities and say, is it really possible to tell handwriting apart? So has there been a scientific study on that? That's some fundamental questions. The computers allow the way of analyzing large numbers. If you have created databases, we talked about, you have thousands of samples or hundreds of thousands of samples, and you can get this computer to go at it. It might not be as good as document examiners, but if it still is getting 97% right, and so human document examiners should be able to get 99.9 then, So in that sense, it allows some kind of a large-scale analysis, provides scientific support for a scientific basis for question document examination. Methods produce reproducible results, as long as, of course, every processing step is exactly the same. If your pre-processing is different, you'll get different results. On the same set of input, it will always give you the same result. In a sense, that's another strong point. Error rates can be established using system on large number of cases. Daubert calls for that, right? What are error rates and so on. Of course, they're asking for the document examiner's error rates, but here we can establish some ground error rates. If these are the ground error rates with the system, humans can be shown to perform better than this machine, so their error rates have to be lower. So these kinds of arguments could be used to support Daubert here. Competency training. Okay, so if you would at all be using Cedar Fox, how would you be competent to use it? So this becomes an issue of using the software, being comfortable in using it and so on. There are many functions in Cedar Fox, as we saw. So this requires some familiarity with it, using like any other software, like even Photoshop. You need to have some level of regular usage of it. Perhaps some instruction might be of some value. So that is necessary to gain familiarity with it. We don't have any formal training or anything like that at this point in terms of, perhaps this was one of the first such sessions we've had. In a sense, we went through all of it. Maybe if this is of value, it can be done again, maybe at some other meetings, ASQD or any of these other meetings.
When I downloaded the trial software from the website and installed it, the first thing I looked for was a tutorial that said, if you want to do a 1-to-N comparison, click here, and that kind of thing I think would be very helpful.
Yeah, the help manual has something in it. Maybe it didn't have it sufficiently.
But not to that level.
Not to that level.
Like Cedar Fox for Dummies level.
Oh, okay. Which is the hardest thing to do. Okay.
Something that I just kind of thought of, and I don't know if you already do it, but the CTS, which a lot of examiners take, if you just participated in the handwriting portion, subjecting the Cedar Fox to that, and that would, then you could submit your results and get score back, and you could just kind of see how it compares just to examiners too.
CTS, what does CTS stand for?
Collaborative Testing Services.
And this is done at the meetings, is it?
They're
mailed out.
2 proficiency tests a year. Labs purchase them.
It's a commercial product.
Oh, okay. Well, I should talk to you offline about it. I hadn't heard of this.
Yeah, one handwriting, one non-handwriting.
The other thing, Harry, is Dave. Why don't you send Dave? Dave, why don't you send Harry your test?
We are.
Okay. Okay, so you're doing that.
Yeah,
okay.
we're doing it.
Okay. That will be really interesting.
Yeah. And if any of you want to collaboratively do some of it with us, that would be nice too.
Because if we could get permission from him, I would be happy to test them because we have them for the last 3 years.
There were 200 question signatures and about 20 knowns. And they're genuine, disguised, and forged in there.
Harish would love to get hold of your data. He's trying to finish up and he needs some more signature data. That's part of his dissertation.
Yeah, I need some as well. So.
Finish up means
yeah.
graduate.
Yeah, both of you are also interested. So this is, you can both share your results and interests and push it in different directions. Yeah.
You can contact Brian then?
I contact Brian and Derek.
And what?
Derek Hammond.
Oh, Derek, okay. And if you want, we could test them.
You
We
have
could
the
both
same-
test them.
okay.
Yeah, we have both.
Yeah, I have a note here to contact Brian and Derek.
Okay, I have 3 years worth.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we've reached the end. That's all, folks. Have a safe trip back.
Thanks.
Thank
very
you
much.
very much. Very interesting.